What's up, guys? Welcome to the DevineCast. We're on episode 2. We did it. We actually
What
made
up?
it
What
back for
up?
episode 2. We
Yeah,
uploaded at a weird time. So, uploading last week would have just made us, like, I guess, double upload. So, it makes sense to just push it off a week. So, we
yeah.
made
Trying to
it.
get back on consistency.
We have Jeffrey here. We have
What
an
up? What up?
interesting episode. We're going to be talking about multiple 1Ks that Jeffrey played at. I sadly had to miss them due to personal reasons. I'm pretty upset, but it's okay. It's okay. What life
Yeah,
gave
there's
us.
always the next 1K.
Luckily, with no DLCs going on, like there's a ton of 1Ks and 2Ks and 3Ks and 10Ks going on. Like it's crazy. I will take it. We talked about how every episode we want to try to highlight a certain card, whether it be a new card or an older card. We just want to highlight stuff that players can talk about, see, maybe experience. So this week I wanted to talk about Great Stone Dragon. I am a red blue player at heart. It's my favorite deck. And I saw that this card is now in lists that are topping because people went from red blue is the stepchild. It's the second best deck. It's not as good as the steel blue item deck. But with Great Stone Dragon, it is now finally getting over the hump. And I kind of want to give some insight onto why that card's insane. I'm going to have a deck profile coming out this weekend on my actual thoughts on the card. I've won 3 locals in a row with red blue with Great Stone in the list, and you just combo with Sapphire Coil and it's crazy because I'll give a little teaser. You can kill Maui Sharks with the Sisu 3 drop with the Great Stone Dragon. So that's all I'm gonna say on it. But that's my highlight for the week. Is that card is just insane. So I love it.
It's crazy how I think when the card came out, everyone thought it was bad
Yep.
because it comes into play exerted, so you're
Yep.
spending 3 ink. It comes in exerted, then you can't even use it till next turn.
Yep.
So kind of crazy full swing moment
It's
there.
honestly, I when I was testing it, I was playing it wrong. Uh, a lot of the time, like people just hard play it. I found myself on 6 when I get to 6 ink. I would I'm now like playing B King or not B King, jeez, that's your card. I'm playing Great Stone, and then I'll just play like some items. I'll try to ramp hard enough to where like I can waste a turn playing this card, and then the turn after that, I'll try to salvage my popsicles with Tamatoa, and then kind of combo out from there and force my opponent to react to my crabs instead of wasting B preps or Sisus. So
Oh
the card makes how I play the deck way different because I'm like hard ramping into a Great Stone Dragon instead of hard ramping into like a 8-drop Tamatoa or forcing a board wipe or something. So it's pretty cool. I'll talk about it more in the deck profile, but that's my card for the week. I'm very excited to talk about it.
yeah. Yeah, and then my card is the B King Undisputed. And
Uh,
all right, hear me out, hear me out, hear me out. Okay, when this card came out, was Ursula's Return came out. People liked the card. I think people only played it because of the Diablo decks because they needed another out
yep.
of removal. And then, like right after that set, the card basically became terrible. But I think I like the card right now because we're in a ward heavy and giant creature heavy meta. Because like ward heavy with the Kiwi decks now
Yep.
with the Alice and then Alicing the Pluto on turn 4, and then needing more outs against the Sapphire decks, whether they pull out a Tamatoa or a Maui Shark or even a big Tamatoa, you kind of need those consistent outs. So currently testing a red purple deck that has some of those B Kings jammed in the list. And so I'll be testing that out during the set.
If he likes the list enough, we'll get a profile uploaded on the channel too of the Ruby Am list. It's kind of a cool tech. I'm not the biggest fan of B King. I'm kind of a hater on the card. It can be very good when it's good though. So it's a double-edged sword of when it's bad, the card is terrible. But when it's good, like you're singing with a rabbit or an Elsa or just almost any card in your deck because Ruby Am's just playing 4 drops galore.
Oh
It
yeah.
feels very good.
Yeah.
And I actually texted him. I just want to cut you off real quick. I texted him about how it's very cool because in his build, it feels like you can stop inking at like probably 7 or 8 ink, just due to you're not forcing yourself to play Tremaine and bounce like constantly. You can kind of reward yourself for playing locations and drawing multiple cards just due to B King being in there. So
And I ain't gonna lie, I'm kind of stubborn in terms of making bad or certain cards work. I did it last set with my green purple list. I jammed a Madam M Elephant
oh
in
yeah,
my list, and even though that card is slow in a lot of metas and considered bad, I wanted to prove it could have a place in a deck list by getting a top or getting a couple tops in set champs with that card in the list, and I did. So I guess you can say my stubbornness paid off in some
yeah.
aspects.
It's always a good feeling. And we talked about it on the last podcast, but Lorcana is one of those games where, like, as long as you're playing like the skeleton of a color core, if that makes sense, you can kind of play whatever you want. Like, there's room for that in most games in Lorcana. Sometimes, like, you'll wish you had the meta version, but a lot of the time you have room for at least 1 to 4 like cards you want to put in there as preference. There's people who were playing that at DLCs and topped. Like, look at uh is it Lore Gains? Yeah, Lore Gains, where he played
Yeah,
Steel Fossa and some, like, he made day 2 with it at a DLC. Yeah.
yeah. It's just
Um,
sometimes you just gotta know when your stubbornness is going a little too far. Like I know, like when I first started playing, I really tried to make that uninkable 4-drop Namari work,
yep.
and that was doing me no favors, and I actually lost games
Especially
because of that card break.
it was a faster set, like, meta at that time. So, like,
Yeah,
the 4 cost on Inkable can really hurt what you were trying to do. So it makes sense.
yeah,
But at least B King, it's playing into like what your deck's doing, so like it can work.
yeah,
We'll
yeah.
see how it goes in testing. You might hate it in a week, and we'll be on the next podcast, and we're like, "Hey Jeffrey, how'd the B King go?" So we'll see about
Scrap the whole list.
it. But talking about B King, at the one case he was at, he texted me that he lost to a player playing B King, and that's kind of what probably sparked all of this. Was I was
Yeah.
just He texted me and I was like, dude, no shot, B King's going ham right now. So if you want, give us a rundown of the 1Ks you played at, if you know the venues or the days, anything like that.
Yeah, so I played two 1Ks this month. I played one at Wilder Gaming, which is in Dripping Springs, Texas. It's kind of like a outskirt city of Austin. Um, and then that in that 1K, I played a green steel pirate discard list. Um, and I did terrible. I'm not gonna lie. Uh,
It
and
happens.
that's kind of like I guess the whole sentiment with both 1Ks. This one, um, I just like I think it was more of like a wrong meta call, and
Local
right
meta.
before
Local meta.
1K, yeah, local meta call, yeah, and right before this 1K, I didn't have confidence in the deck yet, so I was like, I'm just gonna pick the deck that I'm kind of used to playing with some just key additions. Because with a pirate discard, is essentially the discard list, except you don't have the cursed merfolk,
No
and then you just
Merfolk,
add
no
in,
Buckies. You got the new Pete.
yeah, you got the new Pete, and then that's essentially the only addition you have in the list. Um, and the mistake I made was I didn't have any. We don't talk about Bruno's in the list either, and that really hurt me.
I did mention it the night before. I did. I'm gonna point that
Yeah,
out.
yeah, you did. I'm not gonna lie.
I love that card. So
Because my first round I went against Sapphire Steel list. Not the Kiwi version, but the more. It wasn't the Oswald item heavy build, but it was like a ramp quick to get the little Tamatoa
gotcha.
fast, and they made a couple of changes, which I think hurt me as well, because I actually saw this list, and it's actually this particular blue steel list was made for the mirror match for Sapphire Steel. So they put in 4 Zeuses,
Yep.
and the biggest change that they put in this list is that they took out the T-pose and they added 2 one jump aheads.
Hmm.
So that way you can do the bell play. You play one drop popsicle or fortis sphere, banish it
Yeah,
for
one drop.
bell, and then the next turn you sing one jump and you ramp with sail to Azurite Sea. So you can always get to 4 ink by turn 2, and you have some insane ramp going on. And that kind of wrecked me because they were ramping quick to Tamatoa, and since I didn't have any Brunos in the list,
Yep.
I couldn't get rid of it.
Or Zeus,
Uh,
right? You didn't have Zeus?
yeah, yeah, I didn't have Zeus either. That was the other mistake. So I didn't have any large removal. I only had 4 strength and 4 storms. And so like when big characters got on the board, it was really a struggle throughout the whole day. And then so I lost that one. I think I lost it 1-2 or 0-2. That one's a little bit hazy. And so after that, I went against a more classic steel song with the one drop Daisy Ducks. I won that one 2-1, and the Big Pete was the MVP here because I was able to play Little Pete on turn 3, stop the actions, and then turn 4 shift with a Big Pete, and then quest or attack something, and then they can't even sing songs.
Yep.
And so they would have to hardcast, which for Steel Song, you never want to
Now you're
hardcast a
behind.
song.
Huh.
Yep. And then so I would shift the big Pete on 4, and then turn 5 I would just play another little Pete so that they couldn't play any actions or do any type of singing. And then I would just win that way. So won that one 2-1. And then after I went against the Trina Dogs deck, which I lost 0-2. Um,
Aggro.
this is
Dogs
a
is lemon lime, by the way.
yeah, this is a rough list to play against with discard because and I bricked heavy on opening mulligans for
I feel
both
like that's part
games.
of it, is the brick.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, game 2, I had a major misplay as well. I was trying to do some major catching up and I dealt 3 damage to a specific character and then they just Rapunzeled it. And then got even more card draw. And so they
Bro,
were
that card's
playing
40
Helicarry.
bucks.
Bro, when like I'm not gonna lie, because I did the play. When I was doing the play, my opponent was like, "Are you sure?" And then I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do
Say no more. Thanks for the 3 cards, buddy.
it." Low key, I completely forgot about the Rapunzel in the moment, and so like I'm not gonna lie, he was quick with it too. Like he drew his card, he exerted his ink and played Rapunzel and drew the 3 cards. I was like, bruh, like
Yeah.
I wanted to
They've been
scoop
doing
so
that
bad
since
in that
set
moment.
1.
Yeah. And so I lost at 0-2. And then the round after that, I played against another Steel Song list. And this was a different build. This one relied on the Simba shift. So they wouldn't even play the small Simba turn 1 most of the time. They would try
Oh, the
to
ready
run it like
everything.
a
Gotcha.
yeah, the ready everything Simba. They would try to play it like a regular Steel Song, like a classic
Yeah.
song, and then throw the big Simba in there. And so in game 3, and I have tons of characters on board. I'm at like 15 lore. I just need one more turn. And I can win the game. I can quest out. But so this dude, he procs back a Lilo, and then he has like a one quester on board. No, he didn't proc back a Lilo. He played a Daisy and a one quester. And so everything's ready, and then he just passes. He doesn't quest or anything. And then I get to my turn, and so I have no songs in my hand to get rid of anything. And so like
You just
I
cooked.
sing, I sing, draw, no song.
Yep.
And then he has, and mind you, this opponent has no cards in his hand. So I have to waste a hypnotize just for the one draw. and then I draw a single Ursula, and I'm like, well, I'm screwed. So I say GG. I lose the game, and I flip the top card of my deck, and it's a freaking Strength of a Raging
Yep.
Fire.
When it bricks,
And,
it bricks.
so
Arcana motto.
yeah, and so I was, what was I? I was like 1-3 at that point, and then the next game, my opponent conceded because like he didn't feel like playing. We were at the last table, or in tournaments and 1Ks, you kind of if you're at the higher end table, like seat 1, seat 2, you're most likely like undefeated, and if you're last, like seat 20
You can just drop
out of the
most
20
of the time.
seats, yeah, you're like in last place. So my opponent conceded before we even had a chance to play. So I ended the day like 2-3 or 2-4 or something. And so I crashed and burned for that tournament. And then the next weekend, which is like a couple of days ago, I played in the Game Castle 1K in
Very sad I
Austin.
missed this one.
Yeah, this
Red Blue
one
would have
was
gone
about,
ham. It would have gone ham.
oh yeah, you would have gone ham. There was about like 20 people in this one. The Wilder one the week before had about like 17, 18 people in it. This one was about like 22, 23 people.
Because do you know? Did they split at the Wilder at that one?
No,
They played
they
out.
played. So Blue Steel won the whole thing. So there was two people using that same Blue Steel list with the one jump aheads,
Gotcha.
and the Blue Steel, it was Blue Steel versus Red Purple for the final. Um, and so fast forward to the GK 1K, I switched lists because I was like, okay, I did terrible. Green Steel, and then in between, like mind you, this is back to back weekend. So in this whole week leading up to Game Castle 1K, I'm like, can't find a deck I want to use.
Yeah.
Like I go to a competitive night, I go to a regular league night, I'm trying different decks. I'm getting cooked like every night. I'm like, I don't know what to play. And so the night before, I tried Kiwi List, and then after the league night on Friday night, I make even more changes to it. And so instead of the
'Cause we were there till like
standard,
11, I think, playing.
yeah, because the league ended at like 9, I think.
Yeah.
And then we stayed until 11 trying to fix up my list. And to give reference, I started from Harlan Sweet's Kiwi list, and I changed a number of cards. I dropped down from 4 Alice's to 3 Alice's. I put in, it already had 4 Hirams, but I added in 1 Doc for emergency card draw. And then I put in 2 Bagheeras, because I thought that would help with some bodyguard protection that isn't just Pluto. And I dropped down from 4 to 3 Plutos. Um, I think those were the major changes. I mean, I dropped all the
Yep.
Cogsworth as well. And
'Cause
so,
in our testing, Cogsworth was pretty bad in the few games we played. But also, like when I've been playing online, Cogsworth has been very bad for me. And I can attest of last podcast we were talking about Bagheera. If you're wondering why we did the Bagheera change, and last podcast we were talking about how we like that card, and some people have been playing it locally at the shop. And to be honest, Bagheera puts in work. Like it makes me, if you're not playing B preps, like you have to do your challenges properly, like your sequencing. It all matters very highly on how you do stuff. So Bagheera is
yeah,
actually pretty cool.
it puts a lot of people in like mentally uncomfortable situations. It can kind of overwhelm them when they're trying to do their sequencing. And that's mainly why I wanted to put it in. And I thought I was gonna, okay, my thinking also was I was gonna play a whole bunch of mirrors because talking to some people in Austin about like what everyone was playing, and we thought it was just gonna be a whole bunch of Sapphire mirrors. So I was like, okay, I'll stick in the Bagheeras to give me an extra little spice, to spice the little things up.
Yep.
And oh, like it's the most
Purple.
weirdest
D D
lineup of
Kings.
deck lists that I saw in a 1K. And so I want to, because let me pull up the text I texted you about all the different decks
All
I
right,
saw.
I'm gonna grab
And
this.
so like and so there was 3 red purple locations, 1 Jafar wheel deck. There was about 2 to 3 green purple discards. There was 1 like blue seal Oswald without the Oswalds, but a real item. There was 3, including mine, like 3 Kiwi blue steel list. There was a purple steel burn list, a purple steel mid range list, a mid range blue steel, that same list from the Wilder 1K with the 1 jumps.
Okay.
There was a Diggy Hole Amber Steel, and then there was like a classic, more aggro-ish Steel song as well. And I think there was like 1 or 2 more other decks as well. And so, yeah, like my meta decision was Wild Delia,
Yeah.
and I kind of got punished for it. So the first round that I played against one of the red purple location decks, and so this dude would start off, I think it's like the Taffeta card. It's like a 1-drop, and if you move it to a location, your
Like a draw
opponent
card or
loses a
something?
lore.
Oh, okay, wrong card.
Yeah, I don't know if it's actually Taffeta, but it's around the lines like if you move it to a location, you lose a lore,
Okay.
and then also has a shift. Has a shift to where if you shift it and then move it to a location, you gain 2 lore.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and
that's
so
gone.
yeah, they're running that, and then they were running like I think 4 libraries and a couple of castles, um, and then they were running like 3 or 4 B Kings in the list too. Because that's the thing that threw me off the most. When I because he played the first B King, I was like, all right, this is a weird choice. I was like, my first I was like, who's playing this card?
Yep.
And then so I was like, well, maybe he only has 1 or 2. And then throughout the whole match, he played like 3 or 4. I was like, dog, like there ain't no
And you
way.
can't predict that
And,
at all. So
nah, like, and then I'm playing a Kiwi. I'm playing the Kiwi Blue Steel list, so I lost a die roll. And in my opinion, I feel like the Kiwi deck is like kind of mid, going on the draw.
you definitely want to be
Um,
first,
yeah, and
especially with the
so
Allison.
like yeah, exactly. And then so that beaking it ruins the Kiwi deck's tempo because like you're supposed to protect your characters with the ward so that they can't use any like steel songs against it. But the Bee Kings gets
It's
around that.
around it. Yep.
And so they were constantly playing the Bee Kings and Foxing and Rabbit and taking out my characters. And so and then they also shift Tremaine a couple of times. They would play Tremaine,
Oh
then
my God, they
shift
have
it
Tremaine
the
and
next
B
turn.
King.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah.
my
And
God.
and then after playing the shift Tremaine, they would bounce it with a Fox to get both Tremaines back, and then just keep rinsing and repeating that.
So they
So
probably just majorly bricked later in the tournament, if I had to guess.
yeah, I think so because I don't remember if the dude. I don't think he got in top 8, and so I think
Yeah.
very like as a surprise. But if your deck can handle that surprise, then like it'll be a pretty easy deck to
You
handle.
can handle it, or if they brick and draw, they mulligan and then they draw 2 rabbits, 2 of the B Kings, and a Lady Tremaine. Like they're cooked. The game's over,
Yeah,
man.
that
So
game's over. Yeah,
just from the mulligan, you
and
won. Doesn't matter what deck you're playing. Like you just won at that
yeah,
point. So
and then like I'm not gonna lie, after I lost that one, I wasn't really salty. I was kind of bummed a little bit because I thought I was gonna do well going into this. And so I go to my next round and I 2-0 a green purple discard. And I'm not gonna lie, this was kind of like I hate being this person. It was kind of easy only because the dude he still had starter deck cards in the
ah,
deck. And he chose to go second
which hey, respect to him
on
for playing
after
in a
the
1K with a starter deck. Like, well, a
yeah,
beefed up
and
starter deck, obviously.
yeah, I mean, he still had like Diablos and a couple other cards, but he still had like I'm Sucks in
Gotcha.
the deck and a couple other cards that like he didn't have the fully prepared list that he was going off of. And then not only that, he decided to go second, even though like
Mm.
he had lost the game one. And then I asked him, I was like, "Are you sure? Like, you don't have to." And he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm not trying to be competitive. I'm like out of town visiting in. Like, I
That's
just want to
cool.
play." Yeah, and like we chatted up. He's cool people. And so I won that one 2-0. I don't really consider it a win, um, because of circumstances. But you know, a win is a win. So
You gotta play some
uh,
Lorcana. It's a W either way, you know.
yeah, that is true. And then the next round, I go into blue red. Um, and game one, game one, I quickly obliterate because I play location after location, and on like I play mana on turn four, mana on turn five, and they're unable to get rid of it. And then after that, it just goes downhill. Like game two, I break. I don't have a one drop. Like no popsicles, no bells, not even the one drop Mulans. And then they're able to steamroll me. And then game two ends quickly. I scoop real quick. And then game three, I feel like okay, I'm going real slow, but I'm hanging in there. And then I get obliterated because they play a big Sisu, and I play like two or three more characters to recover, and then they play another big Sisu.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was like, I'm cooked. I can't do anything. And I was like, I hate Sapphire Coil. This
Card
is
is
the
bad.
worst card in the game.
It the matchup is very grindy on both sides. But if red blue has like all the key cards they need for the deck to be the deck, if that makes sense, like it feels unbeatable a lot of the time.
Yeah, and this person was playing not the they were playing more of the item heavy version
Mm.
with the big bell and the unconventional tool, and so they would banish it, basically play a sapphire coil for one, and then they would get a second sapphire coil out in mid game, and so they were able to take out anything that I put down on the field. It didn't matter if it was like a big body character at all.
Yeah.
And so like I was unable to even have a character on a board last a single turn.
So that was
And
also
then
part of the Cogsworth cut was it just dies to Sisu. So we're like, okay, we can get bigger bodies in there, like the Calhoun, the Lawrences, stuff like that, that won't die as easily. If anything, like they'll have to decide, like they can Sapphire Coil it, but they also need to kill, like, they're probably gonna have to kill two or three things compared to like playing one Sisu and it board wipes everything. That was part of the change. And sadly, them getting two coils, it sounds like it was just like OD, you were cooked,
yeah.
it was over. So
Yeah, and then I had no way to get rid of their Hiram either because like sometimes I would have a Zeus but nothing on boards. I'd be able to deal 5 damage to the Hiram but not finish it off. And and it'd be pointless because if I deal the 5 damage, they would just be able to use the popsicle to heal it. And so after that, I was kind of like, all right, I'm at that point. I was 1 and 2. I was like, and then the first dude I lost to the red purple list, he wasn't. He was 1-2 at that point too. So I was like, even if I go 3-2, I'm probably not gonna like my breakers are gonna be bad.
percentage.
And
So if you
so
haven't played in the big tournaments, you're when you're on the bubble of like going in the top cut or not, it comes down to percentages and like who you lost and who you beat. Like so when you tie break out, when they close the top cut, if you lost to someone, like say you have the same record, but the person he lost to has the same record as him, the person he lost to is gonna bump in most likely, unless they played potato people the rest of the tournament. So
yeah, so I would say like when you're playing in a tournament and you lose first round and you see your opponent doing like real good, they're like undefeated or they only have one loss deep in the tournament, like just keep that hope alive and do well and you might end up in. But like on the other end, like if you lose your first round, then your first round opponent just ends up doing flat out terrible and you're not doing the best either, then you're most
here
likely
comes
not
the
gonna
bubble. Yeah.
yeah, you're gonna
It's
get
better to
dropped in the
lose to the best
bubble.
player in the room than like someone or doing similar to you because it can hurt you.
Mm, yeah. And so after that blue red loss, all right, I'm like, I have one more chance. Like I need to get 2 wins in a row, and I was like, even though I make it in the bubble, at least I'll have like a winning record.
Yep.
And so I okay, blue red, I lost a dice roll as well. And then this one I go against the seal song, I lose a dice roll as well. And so this whole 1K I lost all my dice rolls.
You need to start flipping a
Uh
coin.
yeah. And so they round one or game one of Seal Song, I brick. And they go turn one daisy, turn two daisy, turn another daisy. So they have 3 daisies out by turn two. And I'm already like in my head I'm
GG.
like, I'm scooping.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then game two is kind of grindy. I was able to win it out, squeezing it out. And then game three, it was like came down to like one or two more turns. Like if I was able to stop him, at least keep it stopped, I would won. But he was able to top deck a couple song cards like a Zeus and a Storm or a Strength, one of those, and then he was able to banish my characters and get the win. And so after that, so I
That
lost
bow is
1-2 to
E.
that. Yeah, yeah, and I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty bummed after that loss. So like I just dropped after that game because at that point I was 1-4, um, or yeah, I was 1-4 or 1-3, one of those. And then I'm just like, I'm not gonna stick around for the last match when it doesn't even matter. I'm not gonna make it anyway. And so yeah, that was my 2 1Ks. Did absolutely horrible
And
in
that happens, man.
both of
It
them.
happens.
Yeah. And I'm not gonna lie, I was pretty harsh on myself.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I talked to a couple of people and I was like, after the Game Castle 1K, the GK 1K, I was like, yeah, I lost all my dice rolls. I had bad matchups, and overall, it was an embarrassing performance. And they were like, "Oh, it's not a reflection on you if you had bad matchups and lose your dice rolls." And I was like, "That's true. That's true." I mean, I was still bummed, but like, I
It's a
gotta
card game
like
at the end of
take
the
the
day.
L's. Yeah, and it's
Yep.
not like I was like being depressed like all day. It's like when I thought about Lorcana, I was a little bit bummed, but like just average, going about my day. I'm just going about my day.
Yeah. It just shows you care if you're like upset about it. Now, obviously, there's a difference between raging at someone and screaming at them or being pissed off and like being upset at yourself that you did poorly, like you played bad,
Yeah.
or whatever the circumstances are. Because I am very hard on myself, especially at these bigger events. I am a choke artist. Like, I will go ham up until like the round that it matters to secure something, and then I just choke like, every time. And a lot of times just due to breaking or like I lose the die roll and then brick game three, and it's just you brick going second. A lot of time you're just gonna lose in Lorcana, sadly. So like sometimes you just gotta be better,
Yeah.
smile and be better.
Oh yeah.
um,
Yeah, because even though like misplays happen and things like that, and your friends aren't gonna like think of you differently because you lost or you did horrible in a tournament or a 1K or any of that. It's just you think about what you did, you think about your plays and like what you could have done differently, and
yep,
sometimes it just comes down to luck and variance.
yep. Sometimes like you could have done everything you could have done possibly right at the time, and like it just wasn't in your favor because they were just had better cards. And
Yeah.
also going back to if your friends are upset at you because you did bad in a 1K or something, you need new friends. I'm gonna say that straight up.
Oh
So
yeah.
if let them joke with you, like if you go 1-4 and they're all doing top cut or something and they want to chirp at you, let them chirp at you. You know what I mean? But like if they're actually upset at you or something because you didn't play well, like you need some new friends. They're not your friends. Um, Obviously everyone has expectations and stuff like that, but like come on, now, it's a card game. So
Right. Like it's not
um,
like yeah.
oh god.
Maybe. No, no, I was just gonna blabber on, but
Um, well, that kind of ties into our next topic. We're gonna try to keep today's podcast a little shorter compared to our hour and 20-minute tirade last week of crazy cards and stuff like that. We want to talk about new players' ideology of like swapping decks consistently. Because Jeffrey, for example, swapped decks. He's been swapping decks almost every week, pretty much, and it's not a bad thing per se. Especially if you're trying to see what you like, because every set's different, so like every deck's different, and it's not a bad thing to always be swapping decks. But when it comes to a consistency, like if you don't know the play lines of every deck you're playing, sometimes swapping decks, especially for these bigger events where you're spending $30 to $50 on entry, can be like a worse choice. You might just want to stick it out, even if the deck is like worse on paper. It might be better to play a deck you actually know, just due to the deck, like what your mulligan's gonna be, how to play into certain matchups. Like, okay, if I have this combo, like it doesn't matter what my opponent does, I'll be able to keep doing what I want to do. So
yeah, and that was my biggest downfall, I would say, is the deck switching. And it wasn't even like switching to learn decks. It was like, so I would have a day where I'm terrible with a particular deck, and I'm like, oh, this deck is terrible, I can't play this, and I would just switch to another deck, and the same thing would happen, and then I would switch to another deck, and then this would spiral on to in person or online playing.
yep.
In various formats. So I would lose and then switch decks, or I would lose, make wildly different changes to the same deck, try it again, lose, and then try it again. And by doing that, I don't take the time to actually learn the deck and stick it out. Because a lot of these times when you're playing, yeah, you might lose, but if you're at like losing at like 18 lore, 17 lore, there's possible changes you can do so that way you can get over that hump and win, and not just throw the whole way or give up on the deck. Because that was me a couple times with this red purple deck I've been working on, and that was my biggest mistake. Is that like before the before the Wilder 1K, I had built a red purple list, and I lost like 2 weeks in a row at League at Game Castle, and he was like, you know what? I'm gonna switch before the Wilder 1K. I'm just gonna play a green steel discard deck.
Yeah.
And before that, I played it the night before at a league, and then that was it. Rather than sticking it out, because if I would have stuck it out with the red purple list, I most likely would have been rewarded, because the local meta at that Wilder 1K wasn't what I predicted. And so that's just that can be what happens when you stick with the deck versus when you keep on switching decks. And then if I would have possibly not made all the changes to that QE list before the GK1K, the results might have panned out the same way, or I could have gotten over the hump and gotten me one or two more wins, because the play lines would have been more common. I would have been able to see the next couple of draws because I knew what was in the deck, and the consistency of that deck would have been way better than those changes I made to add 2 ofs or 3 ofs or a 1 of a certain card. And so, like, it's okay to learn a new deck, especially when new cards come out, but like when preparing for these large tournaments, like make a deck or net deck or something, practice with the deck and stick with it.
Yeah, I agree with that pretty harshly. In prior sets, I would swap decks like night before. Ever since DLC Vegas, which was set 4, right? I think it was set 4. Was it set 5?
Yeah.
Um,
So set five, set five.
it was set 5.
Yeah.
So ever
Yeah.
since Vegas, I told myself I am now playing the deck I want to play at like big tourneys. Beforehand, I would always like just whatever like the top 2 decks were, I would just grab one of those and play them. And
Yeah.
I've just completely stopped doing that, and my performances I've done so much better now, just because
Y-
like I'm playing the decks I know. So Vegas, I took a deck I knew very well. I played Blurpool. I played the living crap out of that deck, and I knew it very well. But going into the large scale meta, the deck was terrible. So like I went into Vegas thinking I should have played red blue because it's my favorite deck. But blue purple was the deck I had the most reps on at the time. So I was like, I'm just gonna play this. So this is a kind of a different example of compared to your scenario. Mine was like the opposite. I should have gone with like the hard meta pick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I just learned as a newer competitive player, like I'm always gonna play what my gut tells me from now on. And it's paid off like tenfold for me so far. And that goes to like predicting a meta is really hard, and that comes with deck choices, right? Like you want to predict like what people are playing so you can play the right deck so your matchups aren't terrible. But what I've learned in this set, at least Central Texas wise, is usually Central Texas is very purple heavy. Like there's always purple decks, which actually you can kind of see on the list breakdown from the Game Castle 1K. Is there was actually a decent amount of purple. Um,
Yeah.
but this is the first set where there's a ton of random stuff being played for
Yeah.
Central Texas. Usually it's like Ruby Am and Steel Song. That's like what's being played.
Mm.
Whereas now, like
Yeah,
you show
like
up and there's almost everything, like which is kind of cool and kind of crazy.
yeah, during the Shimmering Size and Ursula's Return meta for Central Texas, there was a lot of discard decks. It was discard decks, red blue and red purple. And so if you found a deck that was able to slide under all of those, you'd have the guaranteed win. But you now in this meta, the Arceus Island meta, like you try to go against like a red blue, and then you get hit with something completely out of left field because you were hard teching towards certain matchups.
Yep.
So it can just be rough.
That's why some people like the Trinadogs list is doing very well. Well, actually, this past week it hasn't done too hot from the big tournaments. Same with Steel Green Discard. Like both those decks were doing amazing the first 3 weeks of the set, partially because they slid under all these decks. But as we're seeing, as doom and gloom as some people thought the meta was going to be, well, it kind of is doom and gloom. We'll talk about it in a
Yeah,
minute.
yeah.
They were able to like work things around to find openings and the ever evolve. I always say there's an evolving door of decks in the meta. So when one deck gets good, another deck comes and wipes it out or puts it in check. Um, Hence why like red blue's good again. So people are trying to play Ruby Am because Ruby Am's always notoriously for sets destroyed red blue. But now with Sapphire Coil being able to little Sisu a goat or brawl a goat is very strong. We'll leave that there. Smile.
Kind of overpowering.
So pretty much like I don't know how to tie it up too well, but like just go with your gut on playing what decks you want to play. And if you're super new to the game, stick to like one or two decks and just play them. Even if they're terrible in the meta, just play them. You'll find wins because people are gonna
Yeah.
misplay. Like
Learn a deck, get comfortable with it, and then like Travis said, like if you can't get a gut call with a certain deck, bring something you're comfortable with because most of the times you'll be able to play better with what you're comfortable with than choosing a random deck that you saw online that did well at like a tournament in a different state or something.
especially when there's no DLCs going on and the bigger events are only like one Ks. Because I'm not gonna count the 10Ks and stuff because those probably are the like higher tier meta games right now. Right now, like it's all local meta dependent at what you're playing at. Besides like the 5 and 10.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would just want to talk about before we end the podcast the two 5Ks from the weekend. I'm not going to cover any of like the smaller 1, 2, and 3Ks. I just want to talk about the big Wisconsin events because there was a ton of good, very we'll just say pro players there.
Yeah.
The Saturday tournament they didn't split it. Sapphire Steel took the tournament. It was the items list. And I want to see actually second place got it as well. I want to see if they're running the same list real quick. Actually no, first place was it was not even like the combo Oswald build. It's actually very similar to the mid range list I've been playing. But they have
Mm.
Chicha and Jim Hawkins in there, which is awesome to see. I'm a huge believer in Jim Hawkins. The card is amazing.
Yeah, I'm not a believer in Chicha, but I like the Jim
I do
Hawkins.
not like Chicha at all. I've
No.
play tested that card a lot last set, and I despise that card. Um, but yeah, they have Chicha, Jim Hawkins, Bell, Pete, Hiram, Scrooge, Tamatoa, Fire the Cannon, Sail the Azurite Sea, Visions, Strength, Along Came Zeus, Fortisphere, Popsicle, Shield of Arendelle, Fishbone Quill, and Two Lucky Dimes. So it's a pretty standard mid-range item build with the Tamatoas. So it seems like they kind of early they use Jim to like take stuff out willpower wise and try to draw cards because they're going to ink twice. So they're going to try to hard ramp into the Hiram or Tamatoas while controlling the board. And then from there, they're just probably trying to dime the Tamatoas to win.
Yeah, it kind of makes sense because having the Chicha and the Jim Hawkins there, if you're able to get both down and start ramping, both those cards benefit. You're able to get consistent card draw and something that gets a large amount of willpower in the same turn to take out big creatures or overpower your opponent's characters on board.
Yeah, you get to ink twice and you get to draw a card. So like you're pretty much replacing the second card you're inking, which is very nice with the Chicha.
Oh
The
yeah.
second place list was a more actually they were running the 6-drop aerial. So it was actually a
Oh,
very similar list to what I was just talking about. Instead of the Jim Hawkins, they have Tipos. So it's Tipo, Bell, Pete, Hiram, Scrooge, Cogsworth, Ariel, and then both Tamatoas. And then Sail the Azurite Sea, Vision, Storm Rage On, Strength of Raging Fire, Zeus, Fortisphere, Popsicle, Fishbone Quill, and Lucky Down. So very similar strategy, deck list wise. They're just playing a more mirror match friendly deck list with the Ward, Ariel, and the Cogsworth.
yeah, I think that Ariel can come up big in certain situations, like because no matter what deck you're playing against, like if you don't have the B prep, then that Ariel's just sticking to the board,
And
and
in the Steel
then
Mirror match, you can just let it sit there and dime it for 5 every turn if you want. Like,
yeah,
yeah,
you
you don't even have
you
to use it.
you if you dime it and let it quest for one turn, and at that point you're probably already mid to late game. You basically close out the game already with that. So
Yep. So it's actually pretty cool to see like a more mid range item build compared to item OTK. I hit my Tamatoa for 40. So pretty
yeah.
cool. The third place list was Ruby Sapphire, and it was it's very similar the similar list to what I've been playing of Tipo, Sisu, Grammatala, Hiram, Maui, Cusco, Medusas, Tamatoa, Sisus. It's just the normal Ruby Sapphire from last
All the
set.
ramp and removal.
Yep.
You know.
And then the fourth place list, I'm pretty sure is it the exact same? It's almost the exact same with the Cuscos. They have a tech choice of Sword of Truth, which is banish this item, banish chosen villain character. Not a fan of that card,
Huh.
but they are better than Maze. What can I say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would kind of make sense with it. I guess it depends on what characters are in the. I mean, villain characters. I mean, I can think of the Pete's
Tamatoas.
and Green Steel. Oh yeah, the Tomatoes. Yeah,
Yeah.
so that
All
kind of
the
make
high
and
end
it's an
cards are
item.
usually villains. So
Yeah, especially with it being an item when you can banish it when you want, it just stays there.
so that is the top 4 from the first 5K on Saturday. Um, Shout out, is it Schuler? Schuler? Dunce. I know he's on Twitter. I don't know how to say your first name. I'm so sorry. I'm not gonna watch this anyways, but if you do, shout you out, buddy.
Who,
Um,
you know?
Blue is every deck in top 8 from what I can see on the list.
It's
It is
insane.
blue, steel, or
It's,
red, blue for day 1 of the huge event. There was one steel song list in top 16. Other than that, it is all blue decks. So it
that
can seem very doom and gloom. Again, this is all like bigger top end players at these big events. So it does make sense why there's such high representation of blue, though. It makes a lot more sense, in my opinion.
yeah, the thing I want to harp on a little bit is that even though it's the top players, when not so high level players see the top players playing these blue steel, blue red decks, they immediately copy
Hmm.
the decks as well, and so it just becomes a trickle down effect.
Yep.
And so it starts at the top with the high level players like Zan or Dragon Johns and stuff like that. Then it just whittles down to the local level and to the point to where the Sapphire decks, it might not end up being the vast majority of your local meta, but it could take up a decent share of your local meta as well, and that'll start to trickle. Then you'll have to be like, oh, if I want to win or top place, I gotta play one of these Sapphire decks as well. And so, because just for example, the Gamecast on 1K where I got wrecked, the one I felt the most bitter about, or like the one I came out the most like I guess bummed or whatever, was against the blue red because I couldn't even get a character just sick. They would just Sapphire Coil and Big Sisu, and I'm like, Jesus, like I need something here,
Yeah.
like, and so
Now that is
yeah.
if red blue gets going and they can board wipe, even if it takes their own stuff out, but they have like the items to now level the board, like it's pretty much over. But
Yeah.
that's the doom and gloom Saturday event of all blue decks, which again makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense
Mhm.
because it's the most consistent color in the sense of when you sit down and you mulligan what you want to get every game. You know your play lines, and the matchup wise, it can destroy all the other decks, so it makes sense.
Oh yeah.
For the Sunday 5K, it was a different turnout. Top four split instead of playing out. And so realistically, it was red, blue, purple, green, discard. Actually, I think it's discard. I'm gonna double check to make sure. It
I
is
believe it
indeed
should be
discard.
discard. Yeah.
Steel, purple, and red, blue. So two red blues in the top four,
Okay.
and two purple decks. So it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
The red blue list is the same Cusco list as before with a Great Stone Dragon in there. It's crazy. Crazy. I'm telling you, people. I'm telling you, man. The purple green discard list is actually very good. I've played against it online, and I've gotten destroyed by it, and I've also beaten it. I think it's very similar to the green list of they have the cards they need, they can win the game. But they also have the purple cards of like they can gain Lord passively. But the list here actually isn't running goats, so
Dang.
they have both Diablo 1 drops, the green and purple drops. They have the new green multicolor 2 drop, which is a 1/2 evasive with Challenger 2. They have the Ursula 2 drop, Deceiver. They have Diablo, shift card. They have Fox, Crab, Prince John, so you can draw cards when they're discarding. Genie. They have the new 4 drop Inkable Queen that you get to shuffle back cards from your opponent's discard and gain more, which probably helps them close games out if they can
Yeah.
dodge the B pros. They have Cricky, which lets them challenge into cards since most of their characters are very low willpower. And they also have Elsa and Lucifer. That's it for the characters. They have Improvise, Hypnotize, Has Set My Heart, which Has Set My Heart is the action that banishes an item. Sudden Chill, Friends on the Other Side, and We Don't Talk About Bruno. So no core staple bounce cards in this list besides the Fox. Kind of crazy to see.
Yeah, and then I think even at Fox, they're not even running at a full four. I think it's like a three.
No, they
Yeah.
have it at 4. They
Oh, they
have
have four.
Crab at
Okay.
3 and Fox at 4.
Okay, because I seen some lists that were running the Fox at three and not four. Um, I think the list is pretty good too. It's pretty solid. I've gotten wrecked online by that list as well. Running a variety of decks.
Yep.
Because my honest impression when I first saw the list, I thought it was actually worse because for me using this card, I feel like you kind of need the steel part in order for some more survivability.
Mm-hmm.
But the purple part is what impressed me the most because when you link up green and the purple, you give your Diablo way more shift targets to make that
Yeah.
more consistent. And then you still have the base discard package with all the sudden chills, and if they're running hypnotizes, and plus you got the Lucifer. But then you also have the card draw power on top of that with the friends, and then might even have genies,
Yep.
and so you're able to keep all the cards rolling even if your Diablo doesn't manage to stick.
And the list is kind of anti-meta in the sense of it's not going to die to Calhoun's or like the Jim Hawkins from the first day. Of a lot of these cards are evasive, which can come up very huge can come up very huge. Sometimes a genie or an Elsa sticking there and questing like can be huge for just winning a game, closing it out, especially if you don't have goats.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
So I
Like
definitely recommend trying that deck out if you want something off meta to play. That list in particular seems like it can be very hard if you don't know the play line, so practice it before you go to a tournament. But it looks and seems very fun from what I played against it.
yeah. I haven't had much luck because I'm not gonna lie. Trying discard now, I feel like I can never get the discard actions in my hand in the beginning of the game or when I need them. Stuck with like a nice Diablo shift, but no set and chill,
Yeah.
and that hurts.
It's not as good as the Bucky era, obviously. So
Nah.
it's like, because that was your deck during that era. So it makes sense why it's going to feel a little different to you. Just because you're used to like the consistency that Bucky Diablo had. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
The steel purple list is also kind of crazy. And so I'm just going to run down the deck list a little bit real quick. It is 4 Chernobyls, 4 Diablo, 3 Calhouns, 3 Docs, 2 Madame M Snakes, 4 Mr. Smees, 4 Benjas, keep in mind, 4 Giant Cobras. If Tomato wasn't printed, we'd all be crying about that card, guaranteed. Madame M Fox at 4, Merlin Crab at 3, Pete at 4, White Rose at 3, 4 drop Genie, Supportive Friend, that says whenever this character quests, you may shuffle this card in your deck to draw 3. Better pot
Huh.
agreed. 4 drop Genie, Wish Fulfilled, which is the evasive one at 2, 4 Goats, 3 Fire the Cannons, which I've been telling Jeffrey, that card is so amazing. I love that card. 2 Friends on the other side, and 4 Strength of Raging Fire. So it's kind of a burn list. It feels like you burn your opponent late. That's what you're trying to do. While
Yeah.
early, you just do your normal bounce stuff.
Yeah, I guess it would make more. I think the deck is because when you're playing the regular burn list, I think the deck can be susceptible to stuff like the Chernodog's deck and aggro heavy decks to where they can't really counteract it with it. But I feel like with this list, it mitigates that as well. You kind of control things early on, and then you can do the burn thing. The the card that interests me the most about this list is the genie, not the wish fulfilled
Pot of
one,
Greed
but the
Genie.
other one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because when that card came out, I think no one really liked that card when it came out. Um, because you had to wait until you actually quested, and then you lost some board presence
Yep.
just to gain some cards. But I feel like now card advantage is king,
Mm-hmm.
so being able to get all those cards in a burn style deck where you're like drawing into cobras and then you're discarding to get lore, or you might not have any cards in your hand, you quest, draw the 3 cards to get a dock, play 1 or 2 characters, and then play the dock and refill your hand some more. I think it can,
Yeah, I feel
surprise them.
like early game, you want to prioritize playing him over the evasive Genie so you can make your hand huge. Unless you're playing against Steel Song. But I feel
Yeah.
like on curve, you're prioing him over the evasive Genie or Goat because you want to use those to close games. That way you can keep your hand huge. Unless you're playing against Ruby Sapphire, then you might prio like Pete, White Rose, questing for best you can. Even just
Yeah.
playing Benjas and stuff like that. Because Benja again quest for 2, so like Benja's not always terrible. A lot of people hate the card, but the fact that you quest for 2 is still very strong. Those games out. Because if they
Yeah,
don't have
I
big
don't think he's that
Sisu and they
bad.
only have like brawls, you can slam down a Benja, like play a Pete, and then like a Genie late game, and like you can just.
Yeah. True. True.
So Steel Purple is a deck. It is very good. Sometimes the deck can feel terrible because it's always gonna like they don't actually have rabbits in here, but the meme of play a rabbit, draw a rabbit, it's the same thing with the Genie. Play a Genie, draw a Genie. I'll play a friends on the other side and you draw 2 like a Genie and a one drop or something. You know what I mean? It can feel bad. But like the
Yeah.
upside of gaining passive lore with these cards is so good.
I will say I think the only downside for Genie over Rabbit is if you play your Genie and it gets banished before you can even quest with
Yep.
it.
It can feel very
So
bad at that point. And
yeah.
then the top list was the other Ruby Sapphire list, which we won't talk on too much because I'm literally gonna make a deck profile. profile on a list super similar to. But
Okay.
those are the big tournaments from the weekend. A ton of blue, but it's nice to see on day 2 that there was red, blue, purple, green, discard, purple, steel. There was a steel song in top 8. There's a ruby am in top 8. A Churnadogs lemon lime in top 8. Steel song in top 16. Steel green discard in top 16. Steel purple lemon lime. There's a ton of different decks on the day 2 of it. So it just goes to show like is the meta's crazy. So, but
Yeah.
obviously blue is insane.
Yeah. Blue is the best.
Other
Whichever
than
one.
that, that's pretty much all I wanted to talk about this week for the podcast. Do you have anything else you want to throw in?
No, I don't really have anything to throw in. Yeah, just waiting on like another 1K or tourney or. Well, actually, I'm kind of glad 1Ks are over now that I can practice on one deck. But I wanna have a 1K or tourney to look forward to, so I can put the practicing to use.
Yep. There might be some up in Dallas towards the end of the month. I'll have to let you know. But yeah, so that's it for the 1K. Shout out Crazy Collectors. Shout out all the team and all the locals. Keep playing what you guys want to play. I'm gonna keep saying it forever. We need to figure out what we want to do for Market Watch. We also talked about last podcast how we want to do like a weekly playtest or league style thing in the Discord. So maybe by next week's podcast we can brainstorm and figure out a good bracket way to do that, so we can start playtesting with the community too. See other people's tech choices and why cards are good or why they suck and stuff like that. So I'm really excited to try that out with you guys. Um, Stay cool, enjoy the game. Lorcana's great. Be nice. Have a good week, guys.
Yeah, have a good week. Peace
Take
out.
care.
Yep.